Great. So, hello, everybody. If you haven't been here before, my name is Patrick Harrison. I am the beekeeper and owner of HarBee Beekeeping. If you're joining from YouTube, as this recording will be posted to YouTube. Hello, we're a Northern New Jersey beekeeping operation where we keep bees for people. We also sell bees, honey, candles, and equipment. This is the third part of a beginner beekeeping class. Today we're going to mostly go over beekeeping equipment and what are the tools that a beekeeper has, what is a hive, what makes it all up, and then we're going to go into the rules and regulations. So a review of the equipment that you will need as a beekeeper, and you're going to understand how the bees are organized within that equipment. And then we're going to briefly touch on the rules and regulation pertaining to beekeeping in the state of New Jersey. We're not going to talk about currently the cottage food law that regulates honey processing and, well, not processing, honey harvesting and all things honey, as that's a new law. I need some time to digest it, and but we're going to talk on basically keeping bees in populated areas. If you can shout to your neighbor, that's going to be a real part that you're going to want to hear about. Let's get into it. So we're going to start from the bottom and go up, starting with the bottom board. The bottom board is exactly that. There's a small entrance. It's shimmed on three sides with the front here completely open for the bees to get into all of the white and yellow boxes. So regardless of solid or screened bottom board, that is what it would look like. Both of these are solid bottom boards, meaning that there is nothing, when something falls from the hive, let's say a varroa mite or just debris, the screen bottom boards, the theory is that it will fall through the screen, that varroa mite, and then you're able to pull out these sticky boards and then clean those sticky boards out and have kind of a mite capturing apparatus. Some information and some research that has been done, and that not necessarily is the case. It's not necessarily a effective mite control, and that's why I say here I prefer solid bottom boards over screen bottom boards, because as in the next class when we talk about disease and pest management, some of the treatments options that we utilize require a solid bottom board, and that's kind of the standard. So every hive has a bottom board, and it will look like this red one here, preferring solid over screened. Working our way up, we have two size boxes that you'll see in catalogs. You might see a third called the shallow hive. Really don't pay attention to that. It's smaller than a medium, and that's really just going to build confusion into your thinking. Stay with the thinking of a medium box and a deep box. Deep boxes are a total of 9 1/8 size and long. Medium boxes take a 6 1/4 frame. There's just these two different sizes to allow you to not have to lift up the entire box, and if it were to be full of honey, or even bees. Many people only use medium boxes. The reason for that is first, deep boxes are larger than mediums, and just with that simple fact, deep boxes are heavier than mediums. The second reason for that is all the frames are interchangeable. You're able to take a super frame that's up in this yellow down and put it into the brood chamber if you so please. My beginner beekeeper package includes 2 deep boxes and 3 medium boxes. What's important here is to understand if you were to only use mediums, you're giving and allowing the same amount of space that you would otherwise have when you're using deeps. Would you always start with a deep box on the bottom? Yes. So you always start with the deep box on the bottom. First reason, the nukes that I'm selling, and mostly the nukes that are available in North America, I haven't seen very many medium nucleus colonies being sold. So you have to start with a deep box if you're starting with a nuke from me, because it comes in a deep frames, deep equipment. We're going to get into what differentiates a super versus a brood box, but you very well are welcome to, instead of 2 deep boxes as your brood box, use as your medium. I'm saying a lot of the same words again, and that's just going to lead to confusion. So just understand from this slide is that there's 2 size boxes, mediums and deeps. The deeps are larger, the mediums are slightly smaller. Lastly, there are lids. There's an inner and an outer cover. The inner cover is a device so that you don't squish bees. You place that on the topmost part of the colony, and then place your outer cover. That makes it so that your outer cover is easily removed, because you can't really get your tool in there to pry off it's hard to get a tool where this arrow is to get that box, that lid off when it's when it's on top of the colony with no inner cover. So it's something that you'll kind of realize the first time you open up a hive, because they definitely do. You have to pry them open with your hive tool. Your hive tool is in the next slide after this one. So there's 2 here, inner and outer cover. Inner cover is just to prevent the bees being crushed when you put your outer cover on, and so to make the outer cover easily removed when you're opening up the colony. Feeders, in your first year, and actually, sorry, you feed, you need a feeder regardless of in your first year or second year. But in your first year, you're going to be feeding much more often than you otherwise in your second. There's different ways to feed your bees sugar syrup. The first is a division board feeder, which is a device that goes into the boxes as in replacement of a frame. The top board feeders sit on top in replacement of your inner cover. And then these wells here fill up with sugar syrup. Bees are able to crawl through those crevices down the screen and drink your sugar syrup. Boardman feeders in your top right hand corner here, those have a mason jar attached to it. That mason jar gets flipped upside down and then that little notch gets slid into the front of the hive. This is not recommended at all in not even just New Jersey, but beekeeping alone, as a method to feed sugar syrup. The reason for that is the sugar is not protected by the bees for both the top and the division board feeders. This is inside of the hive, so any foreign honeybees or wasps or really even mammals would come by, smell that sugar syrup, and just be able to grab it because it's right on the entrance at that lower part of the colony, as you saw in the very beginning on that first slide. Talk about hive tools. Hive tools is basically a crowbar to crowbar up all of the frames and the boxes that you have. It's really just that. My brother's a carpenter, and this blue one is it's a crowbar. You can buy it at Home Depot for just less than or just more actually. In the sheetrock knife, and but it's really just to pry up. Many different types of hive tools. I have no preference. Actually, I kind of do like these red and blue ones where it's a simple sheetrock knife. They have these J-hook hive tools where this hook here rests on one frame while you're able to pry up an additional frame. And this one is something European. I'm not completely sure, but it's a hive tool. They make them in all different shapes and sizes. The catalogs will sell you. We'll have 100 different shapes and sizes. I recommend buying both in your first year, a J-hook and a regular hive tool, and figure out which one you like the most. My dad has 2 hives of his own, and he prefers the J-hooks, while I stole all the other ones from him. Your smoker in the center here, the smoker burns and smolders any kind of debris. I like to use pine needles. Started off with a little bit of egg cartons. You want to start a small, cool. You want a robust, cool smoke in order to put into the hive to calm them down. Smoke does 2 things. One, makes the bees easier to work, and also reduces their stress, and to lower the tendencies for future like overreactants. If you walk into your hive without smoke over and over again, your bees will slowly become more and more defensive. And then you have your bee suit. Your bee suits here they range from complete head to toe onesie with a veil. That's something that I actually don't recommend. They sell just a jacket with an elastic waist where the bees can't get up into your under your shirt, and a loose pair of jeans is cool in the summer and less to do really. So in this first assignment, sorry, not this first assignment, the next assignment that we're going to go over is you're going to tell me what you want, or what you have, and how many hives that you are going to have, and then you're going to go and tell me exactly what you need. And what you need is okay, missing a slide here, but we'll add a slide here. There's a couple other things, other equipment that that you will run into in the catalogs as you start to buy up your equipment. Here's an alcohol washer. Really, we're going to talk a lot about that come the disease and pests talk. It's a must-have in the as equipment goes, and keeping your bees healthy and knowing what's in the hive. It's like every doctor has the thing to listen to your heartbeat. There's somebody that's not muted. If that person can mute themselves, that would be fantastic. I'm gonna look for whomever and try to find them. Sorry for this. All right, I think I got it. There's mouse guards. Mouse guards in the winter time. Bees don't protect their hive the same way that they do in the summer. And half-inch hardware cloth gets crammed into the front entrance to prevent mice. That half-inch is large enough for bees to pass going back and forth through, while the mice are not able to do so. And there's things like double screens, which is frankly, I use them for storing equipment. I put my equipment on them, and I'm able to put 5 boxes on top of a double screen, turn one of these little notches, so the bees that might be still inside of that hive box will leave because they'll see the light coming through. And then, it's just another thing that's out there. I'm missing a slide here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a slide and add what you need. Sorry for spelling. You're going to get a true sign of Patrick's dyslexia. So the things that you'll need going forward, we're going to walk backwards in this talk. You're going to need a suit, a bee suit to protect yourself, a smoker. Those are, and a hive tool, maybe 2 of them. I suggest 2 new beekeepers to get both the standard and the non-stand, both the J hook and this regular one. With the coming assignment, I'm going to have those for sale, so you'll be able to purchase either of them from me. So then you're going to need a bottom board to put your hive on, something on which you can put your hive, and that's clear. Hive stand, I didn't mention that. For me, that's 2 cinder blocks. I put those 2 cinder blocks parallel to each other, and that keeps the hive 6 inches off the ground, which I think is absolutely clear. Is obvious to as to why. If they were sitting in the grass right now, they would be sitting in the mud right now. And Oh, that's what you mean. Sorry. You're going to need 2 deep boxes or their equivalent. I don't know how to spell equivalent. Equivalent. Onward. So two deep boxes or the equivalent. The equivalent or 3 mediums, which is the equivalent of 2 deep boxes as your brood box. This is not the case for individuals that are buying my nukes. Start with the default 2 deep boxes and 3 mediums as your standard. These 3 mediums are your 3 honey supers. Your honey supers are in place in which honey is stored. And they're mediums and not deeps because honey is much heavier than bees are. So you're going to want to have a little bit of a smaller box. And then you need an inner and outer cover. So that's clear and reason as to why you need an inner and outer cover. You need something on top of the hives. This is the setup for one hive. The aspects that are italicized are something that you don't need double. So you only need 1 bee suit if you have 200 hives versus 1 hive. You only need 1 smoker if you have 2 hives versus 10 hives. So that's why I'm just putting that in italicized. That's going to be, this slide here is going to be important for the assignment. You're going to tell me what you have and what you think you need. And then I'll be able to tell you what exactly you need if you're not correct on that. I'm going to go to the chat for some questions. Queen Excluder. Yes, let's put a Queen Excluder there. I do have a slide about a Queen Excluder. It was coming up. I do want everybody to buy a Queen Excluder. 1 Queen Excluder for each colony. Queen Excluder, I will talk about it in a moment. And how you can start a fight at a bee meeting about Queen Excluders. But we'll talk about that in a second for sure. So going forward, I just want to see if I get some thumbs up from some people that have their cameras on. This is clear. Any questions? This is a good time to take some questions. Can you repeat where the top board feeder goes on the hive? Awesome question, as you will need a feeder. The top board feeder goes in replacement of one of these yellow boxes. If this was a top board feeder, like this one, it would look nearly the same as one of these yellow boxes. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it was a top board feeder or the a medium box, because of you can't see on the inside. Division board feeders go within the colony itself. Can you use all mediums and no deeps? Yes, you can. As long as doing the math on your mite treatments, as all of the labels that the mite treatments have on them are to individuals that are using deep boxes. So there's a little bit of conversions that you'll have to do, but 3 medium boxes equals the same volume as 2 deep boxes, and that math there is something to continue. Yes, 2 deep boxes and 3 mediums are the standard for New Jersey. I'd say that's the standard because here in Northwest Jersey, you're definitely going to need 3 honey supers per hive because you're making that much honey. Whereas in Bergen County, you're making much less than that. You're probably pushing the envelope on needing 3. But it's good to have some extra equipment laying around, so you'll have that extra box to help you out. Yes, so exactly true. If you have a top board feeder, 2 deeps, and 3 mediums, that's a total of 6 boxes total. You transfer your nucleus colony into your hive, the deep boxes that I have listed here, the morning after you pick them up. So you pick up your nucleus colony and you bring it home. You wake up the next morning. That next morning, you move your nucleus colony into that box. Management and the management that's going into your hives is gonna be discussed on the 3rd. So we have a pest and disease talk on the 24th, and management questions like when do you transfer your nucleus colony into your hive will be discussed on the 3rd. Holes protecting your hive from the elements like a shed. It's not necessary. It's we don't get that cold in New Jersey to need it. As long as your equipment is lined up properly and you don't have anything cockeyed, like see the boxes here, they're all squared up next to each other. As long as they're always squared up next to each other, water doesn't get into the hive. So you're not going to be, harmed in that way. You want your bee hives in the sunlight. The inside feeder goes in the topmost box of the brood chamber. That's jargon that I will cover right now. There's many tools that can be sold to you for swarm management. And there's many ways to control or help manage swarms. That there's no tool that's a silver bullet for sure. Don't know. So no, there is no tool for swarm management. If somebody's selling you a tool that is a swarm management tool, that's not going to be true. Yes, it is recommended to overwinter in a total of 2 deeps or the equivalent. All right. So I'm gonna go into, there's a brush that people sell you. You don't need a brush. Don't buy a brush. You're not gonna brush your bees. When you're working your bees, you don't want to brush them. You don't want to aggravate them. You want to work smooth when you're working bees, and to not crush them, to not fling them around the way that a brush would. Those brushes are for the commercial bee operations, for certain things like queen rearing and a whole other slew of things. So don't buy a brush. I'm going to close the chat now as we're going to continue. So the standard size of a box is a total of 10 frames in each box. There are 8-frame boxes that exist. The reason for this is that there's less frames per box, which makes that box lighter. I personally recommend a person switching to mediums before switching to 8-frame equipment for 2 reasons. One, the math for overwintering is much easier. You want to overwinter in 2 deeps and 3 mediums or that equivalent. And that's for 8-frame, or sorry, that's for 10-frame equipment. So I'd recommend you to stay with 10-frame standard. If those are too heavy, switch to mediums. Your nucleus colony is a 10-frame or less, really. Sorry. Your nucleus colony is 5 frames of bees and brood. But when somebody says a nucleus colony, that's referring to something that's 5 frames or fewer. I should say fewer. And that's what you're seeing here. This is a 5-frame nucleus colony. So that's just the jargon that people will use in talking about hive bodies. That's what we just discussed. Whereas a person will, what a person needs to get started. All right, so what is the difference between a brood box and a honey super? Let's see if I have the definition here. Nope. A brood box is in place in which bees are raising brood. The honey that's in a brood box, regardless of which box it is for the bees' consumption, not for human consumption. A honey super is a place in which a box that is added to a honeybee colony for the purpose of harvesting honey from it. So here, this colony here, this yellow and this white boxes are my brood boxes. Whereas this brown, even though it's a deep, is my honey super. Is an extremely heavy honey super, but it's a honey super. I chose to not like my back that when I was adding it. I actually ran out of equipment and I only had the ability to add a deep as a honey super. So I chose to add this honey super, even though it was a deep, even though I was going to come back and it was going to be extremely heavy. You can see here, these 2 colonies to your right. The photo on your right, the colony on the left. There's 2 white boxes, 2 deeps, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 honey supers. Those 5 honey supers are all mediums. I could have not added 3 of those honey supers and used deep boxes, and that would simply change the name honey super, brood box to honey super. So honey super is a place in which honey is stored for human consumption, whereas a brood box is for the bees. The way that we're able to, so also here, this is a depiction as to how the hive is organized by the bees. So naturally, left to their own devices, the bees will organize the hive like a hard-boiled egg that you overcooked. Starting from the center, you have your yolk, your brood. That's where the queen is. She's laying eggs. The nurse bees are feeding those larvae, always in the center, lower part of the colony. And then on the outside of where that brood is being reared, you have your pollen as kind of like a it's a rainbow, but it's I guess it's completely surrounding that brood area. It's a hard-boiled egg that you overcooked too much, because that nasty green film that is around the yolk is that pollen, and then the rest of that egg is the honey. The yolk is the white of the egg is the honey that's made, and that's the calories of the hive. So in this large colony, the brood is in the bottom. There's that small bit of pollen, and then all of the honey is stored above it. Same thing here, but just on a smaller scale. So brood in the bottom, a little bit of pollen, and then all the honey above it. So a box that is put somewhere in this yellow area is a honey super. A box that's somewhere in this blue-green area is a brood box. This photo here is a frame from a brood box, because you can see all the pupae, all the capped brood here. So queen excluders. You ask two beekeepers what their opinions are, and you get 3 opinions. And I would say the person that says the other one is wrong, while they're certainly right, is actually the one that is incorrect. So every tool has a use, and the queen excluder is no different. So time of year and the strength of the colony matters greatly when you're using a queen excluder. 3 main notes on it. In your first year, you're not gonna really need one, or not be really able to use one, as you're more worried about them growing as a colony, and you're not gonna necessarily be making honey in your first year. And the queen excluder is to force the colony into a position where they are more like this hive on the left, where the honey is most definitely stored above them, and they're not, that queen doesn't run up there in an empty box and start to do something funny. Your hives in your first year will not look like those two, because those are very much not first year hives. Those were well-established second year colonies, and they came out of winter very strong, and they made me a lot of honey. Queen excluders are great when they're unused, so that's why they're good. They're a good thing to have around. You put that on a cinder box, and then you can put your equipment on top of that, so that mice are unable to get into that equipment. You wouldn't want to use a queen excluder as a mice protector when you have a fully functioning colony, just because you're gonna really cause havoc at the entrance, because that's a lot of space restriction for them. So remember, there's a time and a place, and HarBee does use them. And so I didn't have to flip back. HarBee uses them. I use them to keep that brood chamber in the brood chamber, so they don't go into a third box. that queen doesn't go into a third box and create, that's for instance, she can create a brood box, turning a brood box into a honey super if she goes into it and she lays it in it. So I want to prevent that from happening. So I prevent that from happening by using a queen excluder. So we're going to pause here. I'm going to take some questions about equipment. I mentioned a couple times that the assignment is to tell me what you have and what you think you need. This is Hank. He will be answering the questions. He is HarBee's greatest salesman and veteran salesman. I do want to note that this class is free of charge because of the sale of honey and candles at harbee.net. It's been great. Thank you to all of those that have purchased honey and candles because of the class. I really do appreciate it. And it enables me to put on this class. If I can turn, half of the people on this talk, 14 of you, into a paying customer, that makes my time here worth more while than a Facebook ad, and that's one less penny in Zuckerberg's pocket, keeping money local, if you kind of thing. So I'm gonna go to the chat for some questions. Has shown education, not for honey production or profit, would still, yes. So if you're going to be managing your hive for education or for honey production, you can't prevent honeybees from making honey. So bring that into your education. You're still gonna make honey regardless of your intentions. So the bottom two boxes are always the brood boxes, and any boxes above them are all honey supers. Yes. So the bottom two boxes, if they're deeps, are for the bees. That's space for them. You don't harvest from them. While any boxes above that, if there's no queen, if there's no brood in it, and it is a honey super, then it is a honey super. What is the optimum distance between hives? Most of the colonies in the country are on pallets, so 4 hives per pallet, touching each other. So you can have them touch your 2 hives touching one another, while the next 2 are 4 or 5 feet away. You definitely want enough room to walk around them. I would say, because you're probably not maintaining many hives, but it's so that you can walk completely around the hive. And you can, when you stage them before your bees come, just see if you can take a box off and put it next to it, and then put it back on. See if you're not like crammed and you're not stepping over things. If that's the case, then go another foot away. I would say most of my hives are 3 to 4 feet away, far apart. Some of them are touching each other. I would have all of my equipment in my bee yard before my bees show up. To answer your question, Ben, is it better to install your equipment early, or can it be picked up when you pick up your nucleus colony? I would recommend having your equipment all set, at least your cinder blocks down, just so that you're not frantic, so to miss something. March for me is a big equipment month. where I'm situating all of my customers with their equipment, all their their um, all their equipment are situated in the bee yard that they're going to be, so that when the bees show up, it's all ready to go. No, a queen excluder will not help with swarming. The arguments against the queen excluder is that it induces it, whereas I don't necessarily that's the case. Where the argument is that the bees don't have the ability to crawl through the queen excluder, but no, the queen excluder will not help with swarming necessarily. Although what the queen excluder does enable me to do is to add my honey supers on much earlier in the season, so to give them much more room early in the season. This is April 1st. My honey supers are going on. And you're, so early in the season, I'm adding my honey supers on above a queen excluder. So to give them more room than they need. And that allows me to trick them into thinking that they are not strong enough to swarm, and when they really would have been if I kept them in that tight enclosure. Yes, there's a couple classes. We had an Easter issue, and I am gonna settle on dates for the field classes and for equipment pickup, really by the end of this weekend. I should be hearing from somebody. You have 2 hives and they're 2 feet apart. And Mrs. Zimmerman, those 2 hives are doing great. So yeah, you're able to work next to them. It's not something that is a major issue. An electric fence. I did not talk about an electric fence. I don't have really photos. I will make a blog post about an electric fence, because it's hard to explain. You can see here with Hank, there's these wires. Those wires are electrified with a little 12-volt solar powered, and it's a 12-volt solar powered car battery thing that electrifies them. Bear comes over, smells that wire, bites that wire because of a piece of bacon or peanut butter that you've put on it, and gets shocked on the nose, runs away, says, this area is poisonous. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to make an in-depth blog post, definitely on that, on my blog on HarBee.net. And yes, I have, want you to answer, where do you recommend purchasing your Langstroth hive from? Once you fill out your assignment, I will have equipment for sale, because now I will know what you need and what you will, I will give you a quote as to how to buy it from me. Is it possible to control growth? No, and I think, Sam, you're the person that was asking about education versus honey. No, you're, bees are livestock. You can't prevent honeybees from producing honey if that's your control. They're gonna grow and they're gonna do what they've been bred to do, which is be productive. That's a slowdown in the questions there. Should a first-year beekeeper expect no honey during the first year, or just a little bit? Expect none and be happy if you get some, because you'll be starting with all new equipment. The bees are more focused on building that wax instead of making honey. My first year, I did not get any honey. Hives that I start new hives every year for customers, and some years you get some years you don't. So don't expect honey, but be ready with the equipment to be able to manage it if you run into that. So that's why I recommend buying all your equipment in your first year that you might not even use. I only sell nukes and I don't sell packages for the reason is I wouldn't recommend somebody buying packages. Packages are, there's no bees, there's no brood. I think I mentioned this in either the first or the second course with the issue with the age of bees. You have your wax builder bees after you have your nurse bees, and those nurse bees now are no longer present in that package, and then you run into a bunch of issues. There are tools for harvesting, like an extractor and decapper to get the honey off of the frames. That's something that is easily read about in your book, and probably much better explained in the book. I will not be doing a class on honey extraction equipment because of the recent cottage food law. How to extract honey, I don't actually know yet how I'm extracting my honey because of the recent cottage food legislation. Not going to get into that right now, but I'd be happy to talk about it by email or by that Facebook group. But I believe the last chapter of your book talks about honey extraction. Another one. Some question. Sure they are. No, that didn't happen. The different color boxes is because the OOP section of the Home Depot had different colors. You can use cedar boxes. You can use whatever you want. I have a lot of hives, so I like to keep them all different. So going forward. So going forward, I'm going to talk about the rules and regulation pertaining to honeybee management. We're talking about the bee laws here, not necessarily the honey laws. I'm not covering that cottage food law right now. Going to be talking about that some other time when I can figure out exactly what the advice is to be giving. So to start, Patrick is not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice. Ha ha ha! Tricked you into, I don't know. This is not lawyer advice. There's a frequently asked questions that is absolutely great on the Department of Agriculture's website. It's fantastic. I actually uploaded one of the forms to the Facebook. It will be attached in the next educational email that will go out, and that talks about all the rules that are on the next slide. When you have your bees, all apiaries need to be registered with the state. That does a couple things. That gets you on the spray lists. So to have all your hives you'll be notified if an organization or business is spraying for mosquitoes or any other insects. Also, if there's a disease outbreak amongst honeybees, you'll be notified by the state apiarist. It is law to register your hives. And it's also just a great resource that could be found on simply by Googling New Jersey apiary registration, and I took a screenshot of my desktop, and you click here, and it's all self-explanatory, and it breaks down exactly. You put your address in, and you put your where you are and how many hives that you are managing at that spot. So the keeping bees in populated areas issue of it all, you don't want to overpopulate your backyard with too many colonies, and then it just happens to be regulation. Best practice here is also law. Law is best practice. That's a unique thing, I understand. But the size of land dictates on how many colonies you're allowed. If you have 1 acre, you're allowed 12. If you have fewer than a quarter acres, then you're allowed 3. And in between that, scaling all the way up. So you're not going to keep more than 40 hives on one spot anyway. And most of everybody here is within that 3 hive mark. So this one here, I know it's a bunch of words and I hate slides that are like this, but I really wanted to just put it in here so that it's referenceable, and this is recorded, so you're going to be able to go on to the recording, pause it, and read this. So there's a little bit of a typo there. So you want to be managing your bees. If you're fewer than 5 feet from the property line, you need to have a flyway barrier. That flyway barrier consists of a solid fence or vegetation at least 6 feet high. You're not allowed to open feed sugar syrup, which will just make a frenzy of insects from really all over the neighborhood. When you have, I believe, I think it's that half-acre mark. You must manage swarming in some fashion. A beekeeper must manage those honeybee colonies in a way in which to reduce the tendency to swarm. Oh, sorry, it got caught up in copy and pasting. So to this colony is located within 20 feet of a sidewalk, alley, or street or roads. Those are completely not permitted for obvious reasons. You need your water source. I think this was asked last time on how close your water source should be. Well, it needs to be at least 25 feet from the colony at all times, and it must be established before March 1st. And the reason for that March 1st deadline is so that your bees find it before they find something else. And that something else could be that top cover of a pool that's black. While the snow melts, that's the first real standing water that's in the neighborhood. And the bees will lock onto that 3 houses down, 4 houses down, and then fly right over your water source that's 10 feet away. So you want to establish your water source before March 1st or before your bees show up. So if you're buying a nucleus colony, have your water source there before your bees are, so that your bees the first day have somewhere to go and get water. All bee equipment must be kept in good condition. That's an arbitrary thing. My imagination is just they don't want a mess of bees and equipment where it'd be kind of like an animal cruelty thing. All colonies must be kept in removable frames. There's nothing sold that's not removable frames. what this is saying is you can't keep a bee tree, just a hollow cavity with no frames to be able to inspect your colonies. All colonies must be inspected no less than 3 times. You're going in as a new beekeeper once every 2 weeks. You should, that is a extraordinary minimum. And a suitable fence or barrier to keep to prevent animals and children from your hive. That could simply be a roped fence, an electric fence for the animals. That is the language that's used, and there's built-in arbitrary into that. That's my last slide. I'm gonna go back to here, go to the chat, and answer some questions. Should you register your hives now? You very well can. Go for it. All my hives are registered. Even hives that are not where they're gonna be are registered. So I have quite a few new clients coming up for the 2022 season, and all those hives are registered just so that it's done. So yeah, go for it. You definitely want to get it done before I get it done before March 1st, because I believe that's when mosquito controls request the data from the Department of Agriculture. So to update their own lists to be able to notify you guys, to notify us. So do that before, definitely before March. If you're only allowed a certain number of hives and your hive keeps growing and swarming, how do you handle that? Stay under the minimums. So if you have fewer than a quarter acres, you should have 2, and then so you're able to have a nucleus colony, if so be you catching a swarm. But you're working towards mitigating and preventing that, and reducing that swarming tendency. That's going to be talked about in the management aspect of it. So there's room for that, room for error in catching a swarm, and that's why you're allowed 3. My hives are insulated around them. Winter, is that a good time to remove them? March or April? So keeping your hives insulated during winter, this is the time of year that bees most benefit from insulation, and that's because the queen has started to lay eggs and they're raising brood now to be able to really exploit that early nectar sources of dandelion and black locust. So keep your insulation on now, up until your honey supers go on March 1st. Sorry, on April 1st. Your bees aren't harmed by insulation, and it can only help. So I know, Mrs. Zimmerman, you only have 2 hives, and the burden of taking off that insulation is only 2 hives worth. I have 200 hives that I don't insulate, and it's really a labor restriction for me. If I can snap a finger and choose to have all my hives insulated, I actually would. If you can't have more hives, so what do you do with the extra? So if you have fewer than a quarter acres, you plan to only have 2. Let's say something happens and you go to that 3. And if something happens, you go to that 4. The rules for that are, so for every 2 colonies, there may be 1 nucleus colony from from March 1st through October 31st. So if you catch a swarm, and you grow a little bit, so for every 2 colonies, you're allowed 1 nucleus colony. So if you're fewer than that quarter, what you're really allowed to have is 2 full-size colonies, a nucleus colony, so that's your 3. And then since you're allowed 3, you're also allowed at least 1 nucleus, so you're allowed at least 2 total. So you're allowed to have 2 problems going on. But that's getting caught up in a hypothetical issue that will very much get kind of lost in the conversation. I hope. So that's another aspect of it. Aren't you advising that the water source is in the hive itself? No. So the feeders that are there, the Boardman feed, these feeders go inside of the hive. Only the Boardman feeder goes on the outside. So these are 2 outside of the hive kinds of setups. Bergen County's hit or miss as far as honey production. I've had colonies produce as much as excuse me, my battery just gave me a notification, so I need to plug my computer in. I've had years where Bergen County makes me 100 pounds of honey per hive per year, but I've had years like last year was I produced only like 30 pounds of honey per hive per year. Town to town, year to year is totally variable. I'm going to end the recording here.